It's also kind of given us the freedom to take on more gigs at times too. All of our songs have like 3 guitar arrangements, but there's a handful of them that can still somewhat work with 2 guitars.
It's kind of adding in a cool extra factor, maybe a little bit of a redundancy. Next thing you know, we'll get 3 drummers on board.
Next king is.
Yeah.
Do they have 3 drummers?
I think they just have 2.
How many drummers does Slipknot have?
If you count people hitting kegs.
I count people hitting.
You're listening to OurSpace with Matt Vettese.
Hey, thanks for checking out another episode of OurSpace with Matt Vettese. Starting the show with a few reviews. So if you want to leave one of those, you can do that. And maybe I'll read yours on the show as well. This one's coming in from Lisa. And it says, so many podcasts out there. And hey, I have one too, LOL. So I can say that. But in a world with so many podcasts, it's so refreshing to have this show. Matt conducts fun interviews, but you also can tell the amount of time he takes researching each guest when they come on, and it feels like a natural conversation versus an interview. Each episode offers a chance to be hit with nostalgia or learn something new. Look forward every week to see who is on the show. Thank you so much for that, Lisa. Today on the show, Matt and Ben of Pretoria. Their latest EP, If We're Pretending, came out earlier this year in June. It is absolutely awesome. I've been listening to it on repeat for the last little while. In fact, the email that came across my inbox that drew attention to this band said, hey, I actually think more people would love these guys if they gave them a chance. So I was like, all right, that hooks me in. Let's give them a chance and let's see. And I was like, yeah, absolutely love these guys. Let's get them on the show and get more people to actually check them out. So Ben, Matt, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on and for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thank you for that very kind intro.
For new listeners who might not know who you are yet, because that's the whole kind of, I guess, theme here. How do you describe your band and the music that you make?
In short, we just say indie rock, because a lot of times people just like expect like, a quick definition or whatever. But really, it's very guitar based. We have 3 guitarists when we play live. Kind of, I don't want to say pop friendly, but it is. The songwriting is kind of on the simplistic side and catchy. We want like it to be hooky.
I would say like we have a lot of stuff that's like power pop adjacent, but yeah, pop, indie rock, alternative rock. To use a great term that everyone always knows exactly what you mean when you use it.
Just like when you say indie.
Yeah.
It's so specific.
I was going to say, are you using these genres just because, I mean, you do have a unique sound to you, and you guys can kind of fit into multiple different genres. Do you just typically stick with the bigger ones because it's kind of harder to niche down in that when you kind of jump between the niche down genres? Or
kind of, I think it's a mix between being able to explain it in a quick way, but also not putting ourselves in a box of like a smaller, more well-defined genre.
There you go. I was about to say that word for word. Yeah, the more vague we describe our sound, the less boxed in we are by it.
That's fair. That's fair. I think there's a lot of that, especially in the online world these days as well. And I think even as a creator myself, it gets kind of annoying because it's like, oh, well, this isn't emo, this is pop punk, or this isn't pop punk, this is indie rock, or this isn't indie rock, this is alternative. And there's just so many different boxes to put you into, I mean, as a creator or as a musician. So in terms of trying to avoid being put into that box, I guess what's the fear of that? Is it that you can't sort of experiment with other genres, or is it that your sound has an identity to it, right? I wouldn't say it necessarily has a genre label, but like when you listen to the album, you can tell, oh, hey, these guys, it's all cohesive, and I can tell it's the same band playing each song, right? It's not like you're dropping a pop song and then dropping a heavy song.
I guess my perspective on that would be, we like to keep things very like authentic and just like true to us and what we think is cool. So when I write a song, I'm not thinking about like, oh, this is like more sparkle punk than, I'm thinking like this is just like a Ben song,
I guess the fear is people can be kind of gatekeepy around genres, and if we call ourselves a specific genre, people might tell us we're wrong, which is really funny. But also like, yeah, I don't know. Like if we say like, yeah, this is an emo song, this is a punk song. So I'd be like, that's not true punk. So I don't know. I don't want to deal with that. I'd rather just make songs that feel true to us and true to the themes and emotions and general sounds that we think define us, and then let other people actually like categorize it as a specific genre for us. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think a lot of bands that can successfully do that and kind of blend the boxes tend to sort of create their own laneway. So I think like mentally that's there, but also at the same time, in terms of boxes and trying to avoid being put into a box, how do you define your band identity or your band sound? Like, so if we're avoiding those boxes when you're writing a song, how do you come up with like, hey, this is a Pretoria song?
It's a good question.
I think it's just we've made so many songs over the years that we have found what we like and what we're good at and what expresses our feelings the most. So when I, write a song or an arrangement that has 3 guitars, it's not necessarily just because we have 3 guitarists or because I want to fit into a certain genre. It's just that it serves the song, and I've figured out what I like over the years, the sounds that I like and how to get there. So that's why we kind of turn to those sounds, a certain drum style, certain vocal style.
Yeah, I would say there's some like hallmarks that we look for. Like a lot of our music, I would say, sounds kind of nostalgic, summery, I guess, which is like an adjective that's less music based and more vibe based. I don't know. We can always tell with like certain lyrics and stuff. Just be like, is that something that like Pretoria would say? Is that not something Pretoria would say? And sometimes we'll come out with like demos that sound nothing like anything we've made before. And then once they get introduced to the rest of the band and all the specific musicians all like put their hand in it and their specific sounds and stuff, it starts to take shape, and we see those pieces coming together like, oh, this was a Pretoria song this whole time.
So with that being said, where do most of your, I guess, inspirations come from?
So I used to answer that question by being like, oh, it comes from our daily life, our relationships that we're in, our influences with other bands that we listen to, musicians that we listen to. But I like thinking about it more. I was like, that's almost kind of misleading, because it seems like the inspiration like comes first. Like we're just like waiting around for like, oh, I just went through a breakup, now I can write a song. But it's more like with me, I'm writing all the time. I'm thinking about it every day, and I do it because I like writing. The making music is the inspiration, and then when I am writing a song and I need something to write about, then I pull from daily life and relationships and feelings that I'm having day to day about the world.
I love that answer. I love that. You guys started in Grand Rapids and moved to Chicago. How was that shift, and how did that shape the band musically and personally?
Yeah, we started in Grand Rapids, and then we had already had like a couple of like lineup changes even before we moved to Chicago. But Chicago, we lost 2 members out of 5 that couldn't make the move with us, and we're still good buddies with them. And so Chicago, like after a year of being here, the band like literally does look different. We've got a new guitarist, new drummer, and so that definitely like everybody. Even if it's not somebody that's like super like writing all this stuff or whatever, it's still just their touch. Even if they're playing the exact same parts, very similar tones or whatever, just puts a very different feel to the music.
Yeah, it also just kind of forced us to take the band as seriously as it required. This like moving to Chicago was kind of like a leap of faith that really made us like have to confront this as a job and not just like a hobby, and just really dedicate ourselves to it as much as we can. by putting ourselves in a position where we don't really have another option.
Yeah, and also more directly, the new EP is all about our move to Chicago, and so that really inspired a lot of that music. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about this new EP. One more thing I just want to go back to before we get into the EP. You've mentioned, we've talked about it, 3 guitarists in the band. That is more than what most bands have. Walk me through that decision, and why did you go with 3 guitarists? What type of a difference does that make? How much harder or easier does that get by having 3 guitarists?
Well, we started way back when in Grand Rapids as like a 3-piece like punk band, 1 guitar, and then we shifted away from that genre. We started mellowing it out, making more poppy, like indie rock stuff. And we were like, okay, let's add another person to like play guitar and like some keyboard maybe. And so we added Matt. That was like within the first year.
Yeah, 2019.
Like the band being a thing. Matt's an OG. So, and then eventually he didn't do much synth anymore. We were kind of just like all guitar. And then a year or 2 later, it was like, man, I've all these like things that we're writing, demos we're making, recordings we're making. They have a lot of like guitar layers. And I started thinking, man, we could totally add another guitar. And I talked to a couple of people about it, a couple of musicians that, you know, are a little bit like role models of mine. And they kind of like shut the idea down a little bit. And they're like, man, no, that's too much, you know, because a guitar is like a very like mid-rangey instrument. And it's difficult to get those instruments not to fight each other, you know, if they're all kind of in that occupying the same space. So, you know, they're kind of right to do that, you know, trying to give us guidance, but we just did it anyways. Because I just had a feeling that was like, man, I feel like with the more meticulous, we're a very like, I feel like arrangement focused group.
Yeah.
So with the more meticulous arranging, you know, no guitar is really like playing the same part, or if they are, it's very deliberate. And we purposefully kind of write things where the guitars are occupying different spaces and have different functions.
Yeah, I think I was actually one of those naysayers at the start when you were talking about bringing in the 3 guitarists. I was like, "There's no way that is gonna like add more than it takes away." And then we had like,
they're just hiring my replacement.
You know, it's crazy. They hired another guy named Matt too. But no, shout out Matt Pavlock. He's still a good buddy of ours.
Great guy.
But yeah, no, then we had our first practice with 3 guitars, and I was like, I see the vision. I have since learned to trust Ben. But I do think it's really funny that we didn't like start with 3 guitars. They were added one at a time over the course of like years, because we just saw a space, like a need that needed to be filled in the band, or something that we felt was missing. And so we added it in.
Yeah. And now every guitarist in the band kind of has their own style and their own sense of tone and touch. And so like when somebody sends a demo to the group chat or whatever, we can kind of pick out like, oh, even though just that writer played all of those parts, we can tell, okay, that one's a Ben part, that one's a Matt part, that one's a Trevor part, or whatever.
Yeah. It's also kind of given us the freedom to take on more gigs at times too, because all of our songs have like 3 guitar arrangements, but there's a handful of them that can still somewhat work with 2 guitars. And so if somebody can't make it, like to give a real example, one of our guitarists had to go to Germany for a week during our tour for like a wedding. And so we just played those shows without him, and it didn't sound the same, but it sounded like Pretoria.
There you go. It's kind of adding in a cool extra factor, maybe a little bit of a redundancy. Next thing you know, we'll get 3 drummers on board.
Yeah.
Next King is.
Yeah.
Do they have 3 drummers?
I think they just have 2.
I saw they had 1.
I think they had 2 at some point, maybe not anymore.
How many drummers does Slipknot have?
If you count people hitting kegs.
I count people hitting.
okay, this new EP, if we're pretending, it's been described as a coming of age record about identity, transition, and chasing dreams, even when it feels a little bit delusional. You mentioned that a part of it's about moving to Chicago. What sparked those themes? Walk me through this EP and the themes and the inspiration behind it.
Well, for starters, I think anything we make right now is going to sound like a coming of age record because we're coming of age, I guess. Yeah. But I don't know, Ben, you got thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a difficult reality that all musicians have to face. And it's kind of taking a step back and realizing that they're probably making a dumb decision. like statistically, like it's extremely difficult to succeed. And even if you do experience a pretty high amount of success, it might not be enough to support you. And so that kind of combined with us all pulling up our roots in Grand Rapids in Michigan and coming all the way across the world to Chicago is just, we're all kind of from, a lot of the guys we're from like the burbs ish, and we're in a very dense city. So that adjustment and that like feeling of leaving home, flying the nest, mixed with that kind of imposter syndrome, that feeling of, I'm probably making the statistically not the right decision, but also at the same time, if we don't give it our best shot, we're going to be wondering the rest of our lives what could have been.
Now, did you move there as a full band? Y'all get one place, all live together, make music together all day, or walk me through a little bit of the move?
The three of us that remained in the band after the move all got a place together about actually exactly a year ago this week. We got a house out on the west side of Chicago, and the basement had Ben's home studio and our practice space. And we would try to make as much music as possible. I wouldn't say we were doing it all day. I mean, okay, Ben was doing it all day. You can speak on that in a second. But the rest of us like had day jobs that we had to work to be able to afford the house and the practice space and stuff.
Are you saying that you were all just basically working to support Ben? Ben was the stay-at-home musician?
No, we were all paying the same rent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just teasing. So you guys all moved into this place. How'd you find your other two members?
We had this friend, Trevor, who we already knew from Michigan. He was in a really cool band called Future Misters, who are based kind of out of Grand Rapids, kind of out of Detroit, kind of out of Kalamazoo. They had like members all over the place. But we had played with them a bunch because they were one of the like 5 other indie rock bands in Grand Rapids. And he fronted that band. He's a super talented dude. Not only is a great guitarist, but can sing, can write, can do everything. So he actually moved to Chicago a year before we did. And so when we moved down here, we were like, hey, why don't we just hit up Trevor? We've already known him for years. We're already cool. We already know we're not going to like want to strangle him on tour.
That's important.
Yeah. So we linked up with him, and he's been killing it. And then with drummers, we had another drummer for a while, but he was more of like a hired gun, like gig guy, which is pretty common. And then we just found a new guy who might become a more permanent member, and I think is interested in doing that, but it's still like pretty new, but he's absolutely killing it so far. So we're really pumped about that.
Now, I've seen you guys say that you've gotten weird with this release. So how'd you get weird with this release compared to past projects?
We both got weirder and less weird at the same time in certain ways. Because in this release, like the sound is a bit more dry. Like there's not like big reverbs or like crazy effects, or like it doesn't get like crazy psychedelic that much. But also at the same time, there's some kind of interesting like music theory stuff that we had never put in our songs before. There's some like lyrical things, like concepts that we were playing around with, some like I've Got No Wanting has like some crazy like split parts happening. And so we were kind of just like playing around, trying stuff out, and having fun with it. But also at the same time, it's still very like hook driven, and like the song, we tried to make sure the song was still the highest priority and nothing was getting in the way of that.
I mean, it's not like a weird record by like standards of like experimental music and stuff. Like it's very much still like a pretty straightforward thing, but we just didn't want to close ourselves off from trying something unconventional because we thought it would sound cool. We wanted to allow ourselves the space to put random weird noises in there when we wanted, put in like a Sonic Youthy like noise breakdown section in the first 30 seconds of the first song. Maybe just mess with a little bit more like dissonance than usual. I mean, the outro on Emerson Everywhere is something we've definitely never done before. It like almost leans into like a progressive electronic kind of thing with this weird psychedelic sweeping outro, and that was like the lead single. So that was kind of just us saying like, yeah, don't come into this with preconception. Is that a word?
Yeah. Preconceived notions.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about, writing of these songs as well. Ben, you've mentioned wanting to move past the traditional boy meets girl songwriting lens. So what does that actually look like for you?
It first kind of just started off as a challenge for myself. And I once in a while will do this where I kind of go through like our like similar artists on said whatever streaming service or whatever. But, and I'll go through and I kind of listen to what else is happening in our genre or like adjacent artists.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of a trend that I noticed that it's very, I felt like some of the songs, I mean, a lot of the songs are awesome. And this is just one element of a song, obviously, are kind of like, it's a story that's very based on the implications of gender. And so I felt like sometimes if you take gender away from those stories, you don't really have any characters. So I kind of wanted to challenge myself to make interesting stuff without that. And also a lot of times, that a lot of times the boy meets girl story isn't accurate in my own relationships and stuff. So it just made sense.
Still able to write love songs, but just less of the boy meets girl love songs.
Absolutely. And it's, I feel like I want to, even if it's in just like a subtle way, contribute to a culture that I want to exist more.
You know what? I'm glad that you said that, because my next question was, how have fans responded to seeing broader identity and queerness as well reflected in your lyrics?
I don't like get a bunch of people coming up after and being like, yo, I love how you...
Thanks for being gender neutral.
Yeah, because it is a subtle thing. I don't, I'm not out here like waving flags trying to make a huge statement or anything. But it's a subtle thing. And so I don't, there's not necessarily people directly reaching out and thanking us for that. Not that we necessarily deserve thanking, but we're just doing it our way.
Yeah, not that we want to like pose ourselves as some sort of like figurehead of a movement that maybe we're not necessarily the best choice to represent, but at the same time, we do very much like want our shows and our community to be a safe space for fans of all backgrounds and orientations. And this is just another small way to contribute to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Do you ever find that like music will lean heavily on the gendered tropes as well, and like trying to challenge that is something that you really want to do, or is that more of like a challenge yourself where you're like, hey, let's try to take this from a different angle or include more people, not necessarily like, I guess, champion it? Like we've kind of just had this conversation. But in terms of like indie music itself, do you feel like it's starting to get that way where we're leaning less on the gender tropes, or do you find that it still kind of really does, and this is why you want to do that essentially?
I don't know. I can't say I've detected any like huge movement going one way or the other. I mean, it all just depends on the artist and stuff. And I mean, I have nothing against artists that, because I mean, they could just be telling their own story, and that's true for them, their life, and that's great. So, yeah, it's not like we're trying to say that it's bad to be otherwise.
Let's get back to the whole 3 guitars thing and writing the songs from an instrumental point of view. What does the songwriting process look like? Is there one person that's doing most of it? Is it a collaborative effort? How do you build these songs from scratch, especially with having those 3 guitars being a little bit of an extra challenge? I know you got into that groove. You guys have been doing this for a while, but walk me through a song being written from start to finish.
So we're super lucky in the sense that everybody in the band can write. And everybody in the band is really talented in that aspect. So that's super, super cool. It means that we always have like a big back catalog of like, or I guess back catalog is not the right word, but a big stash of songs that are ready to pull out of the bag and record and release, I tend to be the lead writer. I tend to write the most. And when I write, it's usually most of it is by myself. I kind of come up with the lyrics and the arrangements and all that stuff, and record a pretty put together demo. I find that the more of like the tones and the arrangement and all the production-y stuff I can figure out at the demo phase, the better, the more we can add onto it and fix stuff, and we end up with a better, more polished end product there. But lately we've been kind of like doing a bit more collaborating. Like we've done a few like writing retreats where we'll pick cool. A weekend. Yeah. And we'll pick a weekend and go out to, so-and-so's dad's house that's in like a small town in like rural Michigan, or
drop a whole bunch of acid or shrooms.
No, we haven't dropped acid. But just go out there and try to get a bunch of stuff done. And everybody tries to bring an idea to the table that they're maybe struggling with that could benefit from just getting all the fellas together and learning the parts and fleshing it out as a group. And that has been really cool. We did that with a few songs off the new EP. And also in the studio too, when we actually went to record this, everybody was there and kind of giving input on how things were turning out, both tonally and their big arrangement changes in the studio and stuff like that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to know, what's the difference between Pretoria in the studio versus on stage?
Yeah, I would say on stage naturally leans a bit more into the guitar aspect of things, because we don't have any like keys or synths or anything on stage, and we didn't really start messing with backing tracks until pretty recently. We always try to do something with our songs where we can to make it like a special like live only experience. We'll mess around with like different intros, outros, extended solo sections and things where we can, to make it feel like an experience you can only get when you come to a Pretoria show, because otherwise, like, why go to the show? You can just listen to the music.
Yeah. And we try to ride that line of like, making it special, but also a lot of the parts that are really sweet in the studio, we try to be pretty faithful to live. So it's definitely not like drastically different when you go to a show versus live. It's just the music, but with the added magic, live magic.
Yeah.
So at least that's what we shoot for.
Yeah, we do. We prioritize like, okay, once we can play this live in a way that sounds exactly like the studio version, then we can start doing fun stuff with it.
Yeah, especially getting that intense with the music and experimenting in the studio. There has to be some sort of, how are we going to play this live element with your music as well.
Mm-hmm.
Being in your 20s, chasing the music dream, you kind of mentioned moving to Chicago, taking that leap of faith. Chasing music dreams can sometimes feel delusional, as you put it. what keeps you going with everything and chasing the dream?
I think what just keeps me going now is it's almost not really even a choice. Like, to be me is to make music. It's what I do. And even if I, am poor for the rest of my life, or never make it, never really see any success, I will still be doing it. So it's just kind of my existence.
It's a part of you.
The cool thing about delusions is you can recognize that they're delusions, but it still doesn't change the fact that you hold them, perhaps. And yeah, like Ben said, I just don't know how to not be a musician.
But you know what, though? I think that's the successful musicians are a bit delusional. All of them, all the big rock stars are delusional, right? It's like, I feel like you need a little bit of delusion in you to actually get to the point where most people end up wanting to actually be anyway. And then when you actually get there, there's probably that, I imagine that sense of like, well, what the hell? Or even sometimes imposter syndrome. Like, you talk to a lot of bigger people that are up at the top and they say those things, right? So, I think that there's definitely a part of you that actually needs that. What advice do you have for someone that wants to take that leap of faith, but they're afraid to do it, as someone that has done it?
I don't know. There's probably going to be, if you're pretty good at music and you're thinking about taking the leap, you will probably have a decent amount of people around you that really love you, really care about you, that will either be like, no, you have to become a doctor, or they will be like, you have to take this leap of faith. And you have to do it because I believe in you and you're going to be a big star and you got to move to LA. And I think the answer kind of lies within yourself. You have to take a step back and be really honest with yourself. Because I think a lot of people, they pursue being a musician, and once they actually get to their goal, they realize that they don't even enjoy it, because it's not an easy life at all. And it's not a glorious life a lot of the time. So you need to really be honest with yourself and make sure that you are in love with the process and also the lifestyle. And if you feel that way, then 100%, I think that you should.
Yeah. My advice would be, you can't expect people to take you seriously until you take yourself seriously.
I think both of those are fantastic advice. Like, I think that is fantastic. I think if anyone's listening and they're thinking about that, like, listen to those words. What's next for Pretoria? More touring, singles, full album on the horizon? What do you guys have going on?
Unpacking our apartment.
Yeah, you may have noticed the beautiful, completely blank background behind us. We just moved to a new apartment. We're still settling in. Yeah, last few weeks have been crazy. We just got back from a month-long tour. Just moved to a new practice space and studio area that has been a ton of work as well. So we are, and then this winter we have some more touring and one-off shows planned. But here we kind of have a little bit of a gap that will be used for a little bit of much needed R&R and some writing as well. A lot of writing, hopefully.
That's what the R stands
That's
for.
R&R.
Writing. Writing with an R.
a lot of writing probably this fall, and then probably some more touring and maybe some studio action in the spring. So
we're going to be making so many good Instagram reels, so many TikToks.
Yeah.
It's all over your algorithm all day, every day.
All right. And I'm going to have links in the description so you can go and head to check out Pretoria on Instagram, on TikTok. Go and give them a follow on Spotify and Apple Music as well, and check out their latest EP, If We're Pretending. One question before we wrap things up over here. I asked this because the whole podcast is about sharing our love of music and finding new bands the same way we did back in the MySpace days. The name is a little bit of a play on MySpace. So what's a band or artist that you're currently obsessed with that you feel is underrated and more people need to check out?
Oh, dude, I'll go first.
What I'm listening to right now, I can't remember.
Oh man, this band, Racing Mount Pleasant. I think they're from originally the Ann Arbor area in Michigan, or like the East Side Michigan. I think they just recently moved to Chicago, actually, but they just put out an incredible self-titled album that I've been obsessed with. I think they're opening for Geese on their next tour, which is also a band that I'm obsessed with, but they don't really need the promo right now, you know? Which I guess if Racing Mount Pleasant is opening for them on tour, maybe they don't need the promo either. But yeah, really good album. Check it out.
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of, Geese, and then their front person has a project to Cameron Winter. That's probably like one of the few artists that like all of Pretoria has been into like at the same time, is Cameron Winter. Just getting into Aphex Twin right now, and also a hardcore band, I think from Brooklyn, called End It, has an album coming up that maybe it's an EP that I'm hearing the first couple singles for. I'm kind of excited for.
Amazing. Well, go and check out those bands as well as Pretoria's latest EP. Once again, If We're Pretending, it came out earlier this year in June, so it's pretty new. Go and check it out. Give them a follow, and remember to leave a review on Apple Music and give us 5 stars on Spotify, and subscribe and like and do all that stuff if you're watching this on YouTube as well. Thank you so much, guys, for joining the show today.
Thank you, Matt. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to OurSpace with Matt Vettese. If you enjoyed yourself, please support the show by subscribing and leaving a review.